Okay, let's get started. So, we have covered a lot of summer hazards in summer school so far: fireworks, broken bones, extreme heat, bugs, bites. But there's one topic we've been saving, and it's probably the most important one we're going to talk about all summer.
And that's drowning.
And this is a harder episode than some of the others we've recorded.
It is, because drowning isn't a hypothetical risk. It's something that changed families forever. And as a pediatric emergency physician, it's one of the things I worry most about every summer. Drowning is the leading cause of death for children ages 1 to 4 in the United States. And unlike a lot of other dangers we've talked about this summer, it often doesn't look dramatic. It can happen quickly, quietly, and with adults nearby.
Which is why this is an episode that we really wanted to do. So let's get started. Welcome back to this week's episode of the Rolin Forward podcast.
I'm Dr. Alicia Rolin.
And I'm Dr. Stephanie Rolin.
I'm a pediatrician.
And I'm a psychiatrist.
We're sisters, physicians, researchers, and podcasters. And we started this podcast because parents are constantly bombarded with health information. Some of it accurate, much of it confusing, and a lot of it actually quite misleading.
And our goal is to cut through that noise and give you some practical, evidence-based information that you can actually use.
And this summer, we're doing that through Summer School, Lessons from the Pediatric Emergency Room. It's a series on injuries and illnesses we see predictably every summer and what families can do to prevent them.
And today's lesson is drowning prevention. We're going to talk about who is most at risk, what drowning actually looks like, why it can be so easy to miss, what flotation devices can and can't do, swim lessons, life jackets, and the layers of protection that make being around water safer for kids.
This one is serious, but it's also incredibly important because drowning is preventable, and there are concrete things every family can do to reduce the risk.
So let's start with the scope of the problem, because I don't think most families realize how significant the risk of drowning actually is.
Drowning is currently the leading cause of death for children ages 1 to 4 in the United States. Unintentional injury is the leading cause of death for children aged 5 to 14, led by motor vehicle accidents, and then drowning.
So in the United States, over 4,500 people die from unintentional drowning each year, which averages out to about 12 deaths daily.
That's huge.
It is. It truly is. But what we know is that nearly half of fatal unintentional drownings occur in the summer. And that's why this is part of the summer series.
When most people picture drowning, they imagine a child splashing, screaming, waving their arms, yelling for help. And that's one of the biggest myths we're going to talk about today, because real drowning often doesn't look like drowning in the movies.
Real drowning is quiet. A child may simply be struggling to keep their mouth above water. They may not be able to call for help because all of their energy is being used to breathe.
Which is terrifying. And that's one reason adults can be standing nearby and not immediately realize that something is wrong.
So what should parents look for?
You should really look for someone who isn't making forward progress in water. You can look for a child who's vertical in the water, but isn't moving or isn't treading water. And of course, someone who's motionless or face down in the water needs immediate help.
But I think the larger lesson here is do not wait for screaming and dramatic splashing. Kids in the pool, they're usually loud. And if someone is suddenly quiet, it is time to check and make sure that they are okay. And when we think about drowning, Alicia, who's at the greatest risk?
It's toddlers, particularly children age 1 to 4.
Why?
They're mobile, they're curious, they have absolutely no fear.
None.
And they don't understand danger.
No concept of danger. This is a perfect recipe.
Many drowning incidents occur when a child slips away unnoticed for just a few minutes.
And that's what makes toddler drowning so frightening. It doesn't take a long lapse in supervision.
Exactly. A toddler can slip away incredibly quickly, even in a really attentive family. You answer a text, you help another child, you grab a towel, you assume another adult is watching. We've all done these small motions. And that's why drowning prevention can't rely on a parent being perfectly vigilant every second. We need multiple layers of protection so that if one layer fails, another is there.
And here's one piece of advice we really want parents to remember. If all of a sudden your young child's missing, it happens. You should check the water first. The pool, the hot tub, the pond that abuts your property, the lake. Before you start searching the neighborhood or checking with neighbors or driving around, check the water first.
That's really chilling, but it's very practical advice because drowning can happen so quickly that every second matters.
How quickly does this happen?
It's much faster than most people realize. We're often talking about seconds to a few minutes, not even necessarily long enough for another adult to notice that something is wrong. And that's one reason that drowning is so frightening. It could just happen so quickly and quietly.
Let's say a child does go underwater and then is found and rescued. Are they okay?
Not necessarily, and this is where things get a little more nuanced. If a child has a significant water aspiration event, meaning they inhaled water, had persistent coughing, or appeared to be struggling in the water, the effects aren't always immediately obvious.
So just because a child looks okay immediately afterwards doesn't mean that the story is over.
Sometimes breathing problems can develop over the next several hours as the lung becomes irritated or injured. And that brings us to one of my least favorite topics on the internet.
Let me guess. Is it dry drowning?
Dry drowning.
What is this?
It's where social media takes a real medical concept and turns it into something much scarier than it needs to be.
Because we did just talk about how symptoms can develop later.
Right. After a significant water aspiration event, some children can develop breathing problems over the next several hours. That is real. What is not real is that a child can go swimming, seem completely normal for days, and then suddenly die from dry drowning in their sleep days later. There's no recognized medical diagnosis called dry drowning or secondary drowning.
So what should parents actually be watching for?
If your child had a significant water event, they likely need to be evaluated and observed by a medical professional for at least 6 to 8 hours. But if you're home, things to look for include persistent coughing, trouble breathing, unusual sleepiness, confusion, or just worsening of their symptoms.
But if your child went swimming, like mine did today, was totally fine during the swimming, felt fine afterwards, remained completely well, and is running around normally days later, they are not secretly drowning.
They are not secretly drowning.
All right, so more drowning questions. As an emergency pediatrician, when you think about drowning, are all bodies of water equally dangerous?
This is one of the things that surprise parents the most. Most people hear drowning and they picture the ocean. They picture the big waves, the rip currents, and these dramatic rescues.
So basically Baywatch.
Exactly. But for young children, the highest risk body of water is often the one that's right in your backyard.
The pool?
The pool. Because pools are accessible, they're familiar, they're close to home. Many drowning incidents happen during everyday moments: a barbecue, a birthday party, a family gathering, an afternoon swim. It's not necessarily during some dramatic vacation accident.
Which is actually much scarier.
It is because familiarity lowers our guard. Parents are often appropriately cautious at the beach. They might be less cautious around a pool that they've seen hundreds of times, that their child has been in hundreds of times.
And what about lakes?
Lakes have their own challenges: poor visibility, drop-offs, docks and boats, and currents that people don't always appreciate. And unlike a pool, you often can't see what's underneath the surface.
And then the ocean.
The ocean adds the complications of rip currents, waves, undertows, and changing conditions. But the good news is that people often recognize the ocean as dangerous and behave accordingly.
So the takeaway isn't that pools are more dangerous than oceans. It's that parents should be just as vigilant around the backyard pool as they are at the beach.
Water is water, and it needs to be respected the same everywhere.
And speaking about lakes, let's talk about boats, life jackets, because some families own life jackets, but not every child wears one.
As a pediatric emergency physician, this is one of the easiest safety recommendations I'll ever make. If your child is around a natural body of water, lakes, rivers, boating, kayaking, paddleboarding, jet skis, I strongly recommend a U.S. Coast Guard approved life jacket.
But what if they know how to swim?
Especially if they know how to swim. Because accidents don't just happen to non-swimmers. People get tired, boats capsize, kids get knocked into the water unexpectedly. Strong swimmers can panic. You can be in an area of water that's unsafe.
So now, this isn't just about toddlers anymore.
Not at all. Life jackets save lives across all age groups.
You seem to have some pretty strong feelings about this.
I do, because every summer I see families spend hundreds of dollars on boats and paddleboards and lake vacations and then decide that the $5 life jacket rental is optional. And that's exactly backwards.
So if there's one thing that parents remember.
Around natural water, wear a life jacket.
Okay. Now let's have some fun. Let's start a fight. You ready?
I'm ready.
Parents love floaties. They love them. They're so great. Thoughts?
I completely understand why. They make kids happy. They make parents feel safer. They often allow kids to spend more time in the water. But the concern is that they create a false sense of security.
Meaning?
Parents sometimes look at children wearing floaties and think, great, they are going to be safe in the water. But floaties are toys. They're not safety devices. They can slip off. They can deflate. They can fail. And they don't eliminate the need for supervision.
But what about those really cute puddle jumpers?
They're certainly better than inflatable arm floaties, but they still carry the same risk. It creates a false sense of security for both kids and parents. It can lead parents to relax supervision and give the kids sense that they know how to float and swim when they absolutely cannot. They also can encourage a vertical body position, which some experts worry that this may delay the development of independent swimming.
Meaning?
That they keep kids in this very vertical upright position in the water. They teach to swim, to float, you have to stay upright and kick. But swimming actually requires a horizontal body position. And so some instructors worry that puddle jumpers can delay the development of proper positioning and understanding of how to swim.
So the issue isn't just whether they float.
That's correct. It's also about what habits they're teaching kids.
And what's the biggest mistake that parents make with floaties?
Thinking that a flotation device has replaced supervision.
A child wearing floaties can still drown. A child wearing a puddle jumper can still drown. Does that mean that parents should throw these away?
No, and that's not my message. My message is to understand exactly what they're for. They're pool toys. They're not a substitute for swim lessons. They're not a substitute for supervisions or life jackets.
You just mentioned swim lessons. Do swim lessons help?
Absolutely. The evidence suggests swim lessons reduces drowning risk.
At what age?
The American Academy of Pediatrics says swim lessons can begin for many children around 12 months of age, depending on readiness. But they're only one layer of protection.
What about for younger babies, like the Mommy and Me or Papa and Me classes where you hold the baby and you sing the song and you go, "Pop goes the weasel," and then they go underwater? You know? No, you don't know? I know.
It's very specific. Those can be really wonderful. And parents sometimes hear that the AAP says swim lessons shouldn't start before age 1, and they assume that these infant Mommy and Me classes have no value. And that's not true. For babies, the goal isn't teaching independent swimming. There's no evidence that infant swim lessons before age 1 reduces drowning incidents. Its goal is to help children become more comfortable in the water and helping parents learn water safety skills and making water a positive experience so that your 1-year-old doesn't go in the pool for the first time and scream their face off.
Plus, it can be fun. But there's no evidence that these classes reduce drowning, not even those infant swim rescue ones?
No, and that's a really important distinction. You've probably seen videos of very young babies being taught to roll onto their back and float face up. Babies can actually be trained to do that reflexively, but the American Academy of Pediatrics says that this ability has not been shown to reduce infant drowning rates. But there are very polarized views online, with some parents crediting the survival training with life-saving skills, and while others worry about high stress crying at potential water trauma during these intense conditionings.
So it sounds like maybe babies could learn this floating response, but there's no evidence that this would actually prevent drowning.
Exactly. Babies under a year aren't developmentally capable of the coordinated movements for true survival swimming. The AAP's latest guidance that came out this summer says that they're not yet able to coordinate their arms and legs to propel themselves and perform most of the motor skills required for survival swimming. They also raise a concern about programs that use repeated submersions to teach the back float response. Repeated submersions can create this negative experience with the water, and that might interfere with later swimming competency.
So my child's now a year old. They're actually 3 years old. We've been doing swim lessons regularly. Has this eliminated drowning risk?
No. There's a statement in pediatrics, and it's that the biggest risk factor for drowning is not knowing how to swim, and the second biggest risk factor is knowing how to swim.
So there's no winning here.
There's no winning. If you know how to swim, you're more comfortable around water. There's sometimes a little bit more lax supervision. If you don't know how to swim, you don't know how to swim.
So a child who's had swim lessons can drown. A child who's a strong swimmer can drown. Adults can drown. Lifeguards can drown.
Swimming ability lowers the risk of drowning, but it does not eliminate the risk.
So let's talk about supervision, because every parent thinks that they're supervising. I'm always supervising.
This is where I introduce one of my favorite concepts, the water watcher.
Superhero water watcher.
The idea is that one adult is specifically responsible for watching children in the water. They don't have a phone, they don't have a book, they're not drinking alcohol, they're not scrolling Instagram, and they're not assuming that someone else is watching.
The designated driver, let's say, of the pool.
Exactly, because one thing that we repeatedly see is groups of adults where everyone assumes someone else is paying attention, and then no one is actually paying attention.
All right, so let's end with 3 things that parents should remember.
Number 1, and I think this is really important, drowning is often silent. Don't look for screaming, look for kids that are vertical and quiet.
Check.
Number 2, no flotation device replaces supervision.
And what's number 3?
The most effective drowning prevention strategy is layers of protection. Having swim lessons, having a fence around the pool, always having adult supervision, wearing life jackets, having designated water watchers.
So it's not one thing, it's multiple things working together. And this is really important because drowning isn't something that happens to careless families. It happens to loving families, attentive families, good parents. And drowning prevention, it cannot depend on being perfectly vigilant every second. So it's using these tips to build these layers of protection so that when one layer fails, because it will, there's another layer of protection there to step in.
And if our episode today felt a little heavier than our usual summer school lessons, that's because this is one of the topics where the stakes are really that high.
And the reason that we talk about it isn't to make families afraid of the water. Kids should swim. They should go to the lake. They should go to the neighborhood pool and have a pool party and spend their summer outside. We just want them to do those things as safely as possible. And the statistics around drowning, they're scary.
They're really scary.
So thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Rolin Forward podcast.
I'm Dr. Alicia Rolin.
I'm Dr. Stephanie Rolin.
If you liked our episode today, please be sure to follow, like, and subscribe.
Share it with a friend. And then we'll see you next week for another episode of Summer School.
I'm a pediatrician.
I'm a forensic psychiatrist.
Well, then I'm a pediatric emergency physician.
But I don't know.